Move to our next speaker. It will be actually around the same topic that's been raised. How can we institutionalize innovation? And Hans will be talking to us about the structured approach to innovation. So I'll give the floor to Hans.
Thank you. Okay, so I have the privilege to talk 2 times today. Can everyone hear me? Because I got to know that I was not speaking up enough in my last presentation. So how's on the back side? Can you hear me? Okay, good, because the speakers are very loud here, so I have the feeling everyone can hear me. Good. Okay, so I would like to talk a bit about structured open innovation management. This is pointing exactly to the discussion which we had before, that the process as such is complex, and we need to kind of get it under control in the best possible way, and it's also everywhere. It's not, it's not a single process which is happening in an organization somewhere, but it is everywhere, and this is raising the complexity, and it is creating a couple of dimensions which we need to understand so that we can better handle it. So very short, also about IdeaScale. I haven't been saying too much about us. Hello? Okay. So we are a crowdsourcing using SaaS company and doing innovation management. We have 25,000 communities, approximately 4 million users, 500 plus customers, and 100 of them are in the technology plus 100 plus in the technology sector, and we are very strong in the government sector as well, in particular in the US. So we have an office, for example, in DC. We're working with the TSA, the Transportation Security Agency, for example, the USPS, and lots of other companies, government organizations. Okay, these are a couple of our clients. I skipped that. I go through a couple of slides a bit faster to save some time. Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so a bit about perspective. Where are we living and what is driving our need to innovate? What I really find interesting is that the acceleration of knowledge has been increasing dramatically. So typically, the world was living in a kind of linear phase until approximately 100 years ago, where the knowledge was doubling approximately every 100 years. Now the knowledge of the world is doubling at approximately 12 to 13 months period, which means that next year we know twice as much as we know these days, which is dramatic. It's of course coming from the digitalization, because we don't forget anything anymore. And we are also going through technology phases. And interesting enough, we have, if you look at this here, we have just been leaving the phase of digital network, biotechnology, and software information technology. We're going to the next wave, which we all believe to be the Internet of Things. So, so this 5th wave, where we are still kind of riding on, is already going down, and we're at the edge of a new wave of innovation and of change. And that this has an impact for all of us, because if the blue line is representing today, and if you're thinking about where are we right now, and this is for the private and for the public sector. The public sector, of course, is not having the problem to be profitable in the next year and not to fall behind. But every initiative you're doing, every kind of technology you are adopting is changing very fast. So you have to really think forward, and investments to adopt to new technologies are running out of value much faster than before. So thinking forward is also driven by the speed of this development, and is also important for the public sector. So, question is, where are we in a year, and are we really fast enough, and are we innovative enough to survive in the future? This is a different view of basically the same thing, which is kind of expressing the acceleration of the markets in which the markets are developing. I really like this picture here, that in 2010 Android was basically not existing, and Android is now more or less the biggest part of the mobile market in terms of operating systems. I'll skip a couple of slides here. So the question is, how should we innovate to keep pace with the speed of market and the change of the technology development? And if you look at innovations, the classical way is, of course, innovation has happened always. So the classical style is closed innovation, which is meaning you have a department which is responsible for innovation, can be a R&D department, and you do it in a kind of closed research environment in which you do this by experts. Then there's another step which is co-innovation, which means you're just opening to more partners, to a network, and you work together with them. And the last step is what we call open innovation. This is exactly what we have been talking about in the morning a lot, which is inventing crowdsourcing methods to accelerate the innovation and use the wisdom of the whole ecosystem in the best possible way. So the best way to innovate in a fast-changing and complex ecosystem is to use open innovation. That's what we believe. But it has to be in a way that it is really efficient. And that means we need to be structured. And why do we need to be structured? So this picture is showing the structural dimensions of the innovation process. On the top right, I think we have another one. Yeah, all components are relevant. And so on the top right, we have the organization and the ecosystem, which I call the vertical. So those are the departments, the market, the customer, the partners, suppliers, and competitors. And if we just look at that, there's interesting to see how complex such a system alone is. So this is, on the left side, one organization. It can be public or private, doesn't matter. On the right side, we have the ecosystem in which this organization is existing. So if we have a kind of line here which is representing the advancement level which is given by the innovation conditions, and then we look at an innovation which is driven by one of the departments, which is here in green, the R&D department. This can mean that this is great, there's an innovation going to happen here, but there are other departments which are simply not ready to deal with this innovation. And it can also be in the ecosystem. So for example, if the R&D department is creating something new, sales and production might not be ready, and they are not ready because the critical suppliers are not ready. So we have a lot of dependencies here. So the whole thing is going on red. The time invested into the R&D might be lost, and also in the investment, because the whole organization cannot really follow. So what we need to do is, so for that, going back, we need to do is make sure that all organizations are ready to keep pace with that development, and also to be able to cope with the innovation which is supposed to happen. And so we have to think about how can this be achieved. This kind of funnel is showing that the innovations can, on the one side, I mean, innovations, every department has to be ready for the innovation, but on the other side, the innovation can also happen from different departments. So it does not need to be R&D. It can also be sales, it can also be marketing, because there's a lot of knowledge also in this department, and they can also be drivers of innovation. So the classical style, which was also in one of the pictures, is not necessarily the relevant one for the best possible way to innovate. And this slide is showing a formula which is just kind of illustrating what it means if you are inventing crowdsourcing methods. It simply means that it's basically saying the number of innovation is depending on the number of ideas and the probability that you can really execute on that. And the number of ideas is depending on the number of people and the probability that those people can create an idea. So this is proportional to the number of people involved, which is explaining why crowdsourcing in principle is working. But it's also here to get from the idea to the innovation, you really need the execution. We had talked about that before. So you also need to have this in place. Right, and the probability that you really can execute depends on how structured the approach finally is. So this together is crowdsourcing to increase number of ideas and then have a high probability that you can execute on that is increasing the probability or the number of innovations which you can produce with an organization. Okay, so the second dimension here in this four-dimensional picture are the hierarchies. We talked about that also before. So these are the horizontals in your organization. And here it's kind of repetition of what we said. It is very, very important that we have then here really leadership. And the leadership is basically what is helping an organization, also a kind of process which is based on a lot of people to really contribute in the right way. So to look at just this example, which we all know, it was not the case that that everything got invented by just one person. The technology and the world was kind of at the edge of being able to do this. It was just required to have the right idea, vision, and leadership to invent what resulted in the iPhone, the iPad, and the iPod. We have been seeing this picture before as well. So this is again explaining that the whole system, must work correctly together. So you need to have the leadership. You need to have the contributions from the ecosystem and from the departments. You need to have the empowerment, and the empowerment is driving the progress, the culture, which is so important as we have been learning. And the culture is permanently changing and improving, and it works in an alignment situation between a kind of corporate or organization strategy and an innovation strategy, which is coming from the process which is happening in the department and in the ecosystem. Same picture. Okay, then we have a third dimension, which is the process as such, which you want to run in your organization. So that's the creative phase, for example, which is built up by the ideation, the team building, refinement, valuation, and then again the execution, where you need to select the right ideas and proposals. You need to find a budget, and you need to implement, and in this way to execute it. And here is where the execution is, or the process management is coming in. So this is what we call an innovation funnel. It starts with, there's a process in front of that, which is the goal finding. But once you have that, you're getting the ideas or contributions, and then you have to run it through a process which is defining or which is saying which of the ideas and contributions are the best to be implemented and being potentially an innovation. And the last dimension are the methods. And we're talking about a lot about that. And crowdsourcing as such is a method in that four-dimensional game. So Other ones are games, incentives, of course, workshops, design thinking, which can be typically before the ideation process, information strategy, campaign strategy, all these kind of things. These are all methods to drive this whole process. So the most important success factors we have identified in our journey in the last few years is that for crowdsourcing or for an open innovation program process, so crowdsourcing and open innovation is very strongly related. Open innovation is more a state, whereas crowdsourcing is a method, but it resides in a very similar way. So the success factors are engagement, quality, selection, and implementation. And the question is, what are the right methods? So if you are in this process, you have all these methods, and you need to evaluate which method are the right one for your particular process which you like to run, and then you select those methods, and finally you assign the methods to the success factors, and then you can execute what you need to do. This is an example for one of the methods, which is just pointing on one problem. So how can a method solve a problem? So if you have, for example, too little engagement, which is a very, very common phenomenon, and we have talked about that as well also in the morning. That's in some platforms, everyone is potentially having the chance to contribute, but it's not going to happen. So the question is, why is that? And a method is to analyze whether we have time and interest conflicts in the process. So you do the root cause analysis, and then you can find a solution to mitigate that problem or to really resolve it. And if you have time and interest conflicts, one of the options would be then, for example, that you talk with your HR department and you create KPIs for everyone, and that would resolve the time and also the interest conflicts, because it suddenly goes from being a kind of additional workload which people are having in the process into something which is beneficial for their career, for their, it's part of the normal work process suddenly, instead of being something which is running at the side, maybe under-prioritized for the person and additional workload. So make participation a KPI for management and employee performance is a method to resolve this problem. Okay, a few examples of structured open innovation processes. This is, I'm from Germany, so I've been picking this one here. Winning the World Championship in football was indeed based on a new style of doing, of being more innovative in this whole process. So what they really have been doing, and there are even publications about it, it's quite interesting. They have been, the Deutsche Fußballbund, which is the organization, has been being innovative in a lot more area than before. So it started with fitness, digital tactics support, talent fostering, even psychology, medical treatment as well, and team dynamics. And that was certainly not only because the sport was still important, but it was fostering the whole process. Another example which I really like is Android. Android was, or is, basically based on the Open Handset Alliance, which got created with 48, today is having 48 members, got created with 34 members in 2007. And it is also touched a lot of different areas, and now it's, Android is 85% of the market, and it started in 2007, and so inside 7 years got to the absolute market leader. Here's the development as we see. Of course, Apple is important, but you see Apple is in comparison to what really the volume in the world is about operating system for mobile devices, relatively small. It's still the most famous one, but Android is simply bigger. Okay, so so what we're doing is basically we're trying to address this dimensions, these structures in the best possible way. So so we have system-supported process steps which are following the processes which are required to facilitate the decision and to find the right approaches to identify ideas and proposals which are valuable for innovations. So this is how the system is looking inside. So you have different campaigns which are here running on the side, and the campaign is a very important structural component to structure the innovation process for the different departments, but also of course for the different problem requirements. And inside of campaigns, this is a campaign. Then you have the contributions, the ideas, and then you have always the campaign funnel. And this is exactly what I've been showing beforehand. The decision funnel, which is required to figure out which of the contributions or ideas are finally really relevant, requires certain qualification processes, and this can be done individual for each of the campaigns in this funnel. So hope you can read this. So we have here discussion. We have formal review, for example, which is a quantification option to identify the value of ideas. Still again not working. Okay, here we go. Yeah, also important, the information options and therefore also the precision with which you can address what you want to achieve is very important, and also the engagement. So for engagement, we have we use some gamification options, which is, for example, represented here by a leaderboard, and and also the team building is contributing here, and for the information, we're using options to relatively precisely describe what the goal of a specific campaign is, for example. And that can be really, it can be very short, but it can be extraordinarily detailed, so there are no limitations. And we are also trying to foster the contributions of videos, because we believe that videos in the future are one of the drivers of understanding and of community interaction, because they combine information and emotional components in the best possible way, so that you can explain in the best possible way what you would like to achieve, and also what the contributions were. Okay, so all in all, we believe that higher overall innovation productivity gets established by structured open innovation, and that leadership will result in a very focused management. And that's what we call the approach of structured open innovation, and it will help to deal with the complexity of the innovation process. So our kind of credo is be innovative, be structured, and be successful, and that everyone can do it, and we hope and we really want to foster that this is going to happen more and more in the future, because innovation is really our passion, and whatever we can do to improve this is good for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hans.